apparently I literally fed Snowflake to the wall. Even more creepy, frankly, was paparazzi went down to the beach and took pictures of Heidi in her bikini. Here's a suggestion, just don't be assholes.
HHS facility in Carrizo Springs, Texas for migrant children. And you said it is not kids in cages. We've seen some photos now of containers. Is there a better description? Is it kids in containers instead of kids in cages? What is the White House's description of this facility?
These HHS facilities, this is one of them you're referring to, we had to expand and open additional facilities because there was not enough space in the existing facilities. This facility in Texas, which has been reopened, has been revamped, there are teachers, there is medical facilities.
Just like Alcatraz, all the amenities. It is a 4-diamond facility container, cage, that these kids are being treated to. And as much as Jen Psaki, as much effort as she puts into trying to avoid the hard truth in this.
Circle back, that's your way of saying to the media that if a fact's in doubt, you'll go find things out and give more details when you circle back. You're no hack, Jen Psaki. You're no hack.
Definitely not.
So she is, it is a tough one out there. And we'll have that exchange. It was really, really good because it's a really tough thing. And she spent 4 minutes explaining how these cages were not cages. And the dance she had to do was tough to watch, I tell you, but it was good, and it's healthy. It's healthy for people to see this and people to understand what's happening down there. I'm just going to let my friend AOC from 2019 tell you what we have. Whoa, hold on. Tell you what we have happening in this country.
The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border, and that is exactly what they are. They are concentration camps. And if that doesn't bother you, we can have, okay, whatever. I want to talk to the people that are concerned enough.
Yes,
with
like me and other caring Americans who understand that the words of the Statue of Liberty say, give me your tired and poor. And we know that is the central canon of laws and fundamental principles of this country. I learned that from a member of the media of the fifth column. And so I believe that. And yes, I don't know why Biden and Jen Psaki, forget them. If they're not even willing to admit that having concentration camps is a bad thing, then forget them. I do think that we need some protests down at the border. It is, it's what's happening. But I want to veer before we get into the Jen Psaki thing. Alice, we've got a situation on Twitter here. We have been swept in. The meek, erstwhile, nascent podcast, Burn Barrel podcast, has been swept into a vicious competition on Twitter involving some monsters of social media and media itself.
Yeah, we've been placed into a podcast bracket. It's pretty heavy on the Barstool podcasts. But basically, we've been put up against, what's the name of the show that we're up against, honey?
I don't remember. PT, Pardon the Interruption?
Pardon My Take.
Pardon My Take, okay.
Pardon My Take with Barstool Big Cat, who's Dan Katz from Chicago. So we're the 8 seed.
So that's his show.
Yeah, we're the 8 seed and he's the 1 seed in this. Their podcast has 600,000 Twitter followers, and we're 50-50 with them. So if you're listening to this and it's still Wednesday evening, you may still have time to vote. There's still 4 hours left.
Please vote. Please get everybody you've
all
ever
85
met.
Of you
everybody you've ever met. Please dial every available phone number in China and India and any other country with a large population and have them vote for us.
Yeah.
The idea that this...
You can find it on our Twitter, @BurnBarrelPod. We've retweeted the poll a couple times. But, there's about to be a large upset, potentially. We're on the verge of a large upset victory in the first round of the bracket. So,
Pardon My Take is a huge Barstool show. I've actually heard those guys on the Kirk Minahan podcast, which you should listen to. I've heard Big Cat on it. He's a really cool guy. He's a really great guy. So which was going to make it all the more difficult if we somehow pull this out. We're not going to pull it out. The moment he notices, it's going to be 80 trillion to 1.
I assume he hasn't tweeted it or noticed that somebody with 1,000 Twitter followers has made a bracket and placed him in it. But we've noticed, so we're excited.
The upstart, new, freshly minted force that steals this one, a la AOC in her district a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Help us be your AOC, please, and vote in that Twitter poll. And if you have to...
We're up a few votes now. It's 51.6 to 48.4 now.
Yes. Create fake accounts if you can, and whatever if you can hack into it.
Don't let this be like election night 2020. Don't let them come in the dead of night and perform any vote dumps minutes before the poll closes.
There we go. We're just booted off of YouTube with that one. Ooh. Hold on.
And there goes the warning label on our video.
So let me get to, before we start here, I just want to get to something. Okay. Let me get to a couple of things. A very interesting thing that was asked in the She's No Hack Circle back, Jen Psaki presser today. A reporter had an interesting question. Psaki did not have the answer for this, but it's an interesting question.
There's been some survey data that suggests there's some hesitancy within the armed services of taking the vaccine. The commander-in-chief, in theory, could require that members of the military take the vaccine. Is that something he's considered doing and is wanting or willing to do?
That's a really interesting question. Everyone's questions are interesting, but that's a very interesting question. I have not spoken with him about that or to Secretary Austin about that, who any decision like that would be in consultation and at his recommendation. I'm happy to follow up with it on it, or I would suggest you talk to my old friend John Kirby about where they stand on that question. Go ahead.
Fine. Not shockingly, she's circling back. That's fine. But isn't it an interesting question, though? And that one I would tell her to circle back and talk to some people, because that is a dangerous question. He could compel the military. And if we're following the science, then wouldn't they compel the military? Most healthcare facilities, I believe, certainly in Massachusetts, they're not compelling healthcare people to take the vaccine. You don't have to.
But a lot of them have previously compelled people to take the flu shot, which is much less effective than this COVID shot.
Right. Yes. But,
just from the employer, not from a state level.
But so this is interesting. In the middle, do you think there's any chance that Biden would do that?
I don't think so, just because I think that we're going to get, and this is my optimism talking, so maybe I'm wrong. I know people who say they're going to keep coming out with new variants and they'll demand that we all get it. But I think that we're going to have, 30% of the population's already had the thing. So they have at least some degree of immunity. Now we're up to maybe 15% vaccinated as well, and now probably some of those people had it and didn't realize, but probably not the majority of them, because they are telling you if you had it, don't get it yet. So altogether, we're getting close to probably 40% of the population that has some degree of immunity. Now, we're vaccinating 1 to 2 million people a day. In 30 days, that's another 60 million people. That's another 20% of the population, So we're talking about, now we're in numbers where we start to see effects of herd immunity. And that's without starting to go towards people who need that. I understand that,
and that's the scientific reason for where maybe it might not be pressing.
Well, yeah, but if it's not pressing, you're not going to have the political will behind it to actually carry out a policy like that. If it's pressing, if there's new variants and people continue to die and the vaccination isn't working, and they're saying we need a higher number of people vaccinated in order for this to work, and that's why people are still dying, then I think you could have a situation where there is the political will to actually put in a policy like that.
Well, I think another thing is the military skews younger. Obviously the troops are in their 20s and 30s, the enlisted guys, et cetera, generally. And you're usually out of there by the time you're 50 or 60. I believe that's the deal.
But I don't see any compulsion really happening. Because
if Biden wears a mask, he makes everybody in every federal building wear a mask, and he could compel these people to get vaccinations.
But it's one thing to say, put a piece of cloth on your face. It's another thing to say, I'm going to inject you with this thing that has side effects and could kill you. it's obviously a very, very small number of people that the vaccine kills. It's like a 1 in a million chance that you'll be killed by the vaccine. But, there's a reason why we generally expect people to have vaccines, and we make people get exemptions if their kids aren't going to have them in school and stuff. But we don't by force make people get vaccinated the way they have in the past, like in Europe and stuff, where it's just like you absolutely have to. Like, that's it. That's the end. There's no like religious exemption in some countries for vaccines. You just have to go get the vaccine.
Right.
And we've never really had that in this country. The strongest it's ever gotten is, with a religious exemption, and people complain about that even sometimes too, like with measles. But no one's like grabbing children off the street and vaccinating them for measles against their parents' will. It's just not something that people do in the U.S. And I don't think it.
Right.
I think it kind of cuts against the character of our nation a little bit. Just we're a little bit rebellious and.
Well, actually, weren't the Tuskegee Airmen
experimented on?
Well, yeah, I know they were, but I assume that wasn't voluntary. I assume they were.
Yeah,
told.
but they were also lied to. Yeah. So.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and people are rightfully outraged by that.
Yes.
Because it's wrong.
Yes.
That's not. Whereas in some parts of the world, that just goes to territories. Your government can do stuff like that to you. But there's I'm not a vaccine skeptic personally, but and I understand the arguments that you have to have over a certain percent of the population get vaccinated or it doesn't help, but I mean it to a degree helps you, but the real effect comes from having herd immunity, and you can't get that unless a big percent of people do it. But there's no point in going after that last small percent that won't do it, because they don't really cause much problem unless they go over a certain percent of the population. It's fine. I don't know.
To poodles, Alice. So, Ted Cruz went on what was the podcast called?
Ruthless Comfortably Smug.
He's a big Twitter guy, by the way. And please DM him, everybody, and let them know to vote for us against Big Cat. They had Ted Cruz on today, those guys, and he had some interesting things to say, including about Little Snowflake. Mm-hmm. Little Snowflake Cruz, the poodle who was abandoned in the house to freeze to death. The issue was addressed.
Look, I spend too much time on Twitter, so I've seen apparently I literally fed Snowflake to the wolves. And it, of all the ridiculous stories, look, I love Snowflake. He was home with a dog sitter, and actually the heat and power was back on. And so this reporter went to our house and took a picture of Snowflake looking out the front door, which he does most days. And whoever walks by the sidewalk, whatever dog, if a dog comes by, Snowflake will bark. Every dog he barks. And the whole thing is just, it's a little bit absurd.
Do we have questions as to how a grown man has a dog named Snowflake, Alice?
I assume it's his kid's idea.
You got to draw a line. Our dogs have, one is standard, very generic Pepper. And that's from Pepper from Little Orphan Annie, probably, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And the other is Dave, because we have a son who comes up with creative things, and he wanted to call him Dave.
Yeah.
He saw a cat, he wanted to name Nacho. I like that.
He wrote in one of his school assignments today that he actually would have preferred the name Salt for Dave, like to have salt and pepper.
Yeah, well, it was too easy. What did they write about me? He write about me today?
That was yesterday. He had to write a letter. We're reading Sarah Plain and Tall, which is a children's book where this family in Kansas, after the mom and it dies, the dad puts an ad in the paper to write for a new wife to come live with them. So,
which for me is near a tandem.
Anyway, so the assignment was that you were supposed to write a letter to if your family needed a new mom, how you would advertise, you would with a newspaper ad that you would write to advertise your family. So he wrote that it's a lot of hard work and you'd have to change diapers. And then I told him that maybe he should think of some positive things to put in too, to sell it a little bit more. And he said that that she would get to read aloud books to the kids at night. And then I said, well, you could say Daddy's handsome or something. And he said, no, you can say he's not that handsome, but he tells funny jokes.
Yes. There you go. It's a loving tribute from my son. All right, back to Ted Cruz. He took umbrage, Allison. I think this is something that every woman in the country can understand.
Mm-hmm.
Even more creepy, frankly, was paparazzi went down to the beach and took pictures of Heidi in her bikini.
Now that is, yeah.
And the New York Post ran all these pictures of Heidi in her bikini. And I will tell you that she is pissed about. All the rest of it, she's fine. But now I'm sitting there. Look, Heidi is smoking hot. So I looked at the pictures and said, man, you look great. But, I don't think there are many women that would be thrilled to have reporters following them around, taking pictures of them in their bikinis and sticking them in the pages of the New York Post. But that's what goes by journalism these days.
I think every woman on earth could imagine the paparazzi, huge telephoto lenses right up on your body, and
it's terrible. I hope she blamed Ted because it really was a terrible decision to go to Cancun in the middle of that stuff.
It was.
So I can't blame the paparazzi necessarily either, but that is a terrible freaking situation.
Right. You can blame the neighbors, though, who are also jerks.
Yeah, I will say Heidi's pretty pissed at that. She actually was over to...
It's about the texts being leaked.
Mm-hmm.
...the neighbor's house yesterday, sort of walking through. So she texted several of our neighbors. Now, look, our neighbors... We've got a number of Republicans who are neighbors, but we also have a number of Democrats. Right. And so, we had folks on our street who put up Beto signs, which I thought was a little, a little rude. But I was, I didn't hold a victory party in the front yards when we won. So, I was, look, obviously it's a sign of how ridiculously politicized and nasty and just, here's a suggestion. Just don't be assholes.
Ted working blue on the Ruthless podcast. But he makes a good point there. The town we moved out of, you ran for office. We had people around who
put out all kinds of signs.
Right. All of other people who wouldn't put on lawn signs.
Because they were scared. I mean, it just goes to show you what a different world it is, because he thinks it's a little rude for people to put out lawn signs for the opponent. We had people rush their kids out of the room if we came into a place, basically. That's how we were treated because we were Republicans in Massachusetts. So in a more liberal sided town, this town's probably more 2/3 liberal and 1/3 conservative. But that town was more probably 80 or 90. But it just, at least in the parents' demo, but it he's just not used to that in Texas. He thinks that's rude that they put out a lawn sign. Wow.
Oh, they are the next door neighbors. I mean,
if you're friendly with them, it's a little weird. But
there are people who have lawn signs for support and people who are saying "F you," and that's what that is.
True. So especially, I wasn't quite clear if he meant that they put them out during the actual race with Beto, or
they did.
They put them out when he came back from Cancun, because that would be kind of rude.
So let's get to that Peter Doocy stuff. It's just because it's just too good, and he is definitely piling it on now. Mm-hmm. He is totally emboldened, and good for him. I mean, he's been a working street reporter now for quite a while, and I will be wary if he starts. And there's some cuteness to this question. I don't want showboating reporters like that. I didn't like the Helen Thomas crap. Certainly didn't like any of these morons in the last 40 years, and Yamiche and Jim Acosta and all those people, etc. So I'll be keeping an eye on Peter just to make sure he doesn't let his head get too big. But asking tough questions is absolutely legit, and that is his job.
We spoke yesterday about immigration and this facility, HHS facility in Carrizo Springs, Texas, for migrant children. And you said it is not kids in cages. We've seen some photos now of containers. Is there a better description? Is it kids in containers instead of kids in cages? What is the White House's description of this facility?
Well, let me give a broader description of what's happening here.
And she has a broader description ready because yesterday was no bueno.
It did not go well. So a little bird told me, actually. Somebody liberal texted me and said they were listening to the show, and they said that that their liberal friends and their more progressive friends are all angry about the new Biden opening the new facility.
Here we go. Good. It's
after he promised
honesty.
No kids in cages, and that I said, well, what about under Obama? And she said, well, I think they've come around in the last few years to realize that Obama was actually a conservative too. So that's I think where they are, but
it's progress.
We're getting there.
We have a number of unaccompanied minors, children who are coming into the country without their families. What we are not doing, what the last administration did, was separate those kids, rip them from the arms of their parents at the border. We are not doing that.
Yes, we're putting them into cages in a different way. We're not doing separations where dad is arrested and so that you got to put the kid somewhere and so he's going to have to be in a holding facility because he can't go to the Huskow with dad. Right, we got a different way that we're putting kids into cages. At the end of the day, Jen, kids are getting into cages.
Somehow, yeah.
In containers, facilities, whatever you want to call them.
Is immoral, and that is not the approach of this administration.
That's immoral. That's immoral. Our cages are moral cages.
These are good cages.
These kids, we have a couple of options. We can send them back home and do a dangerous journey back. We are not doing that either. That is also putting them at risk. We can quickly transfer them from CBP to these HHS-run facilities. That's one option. Or we can put them with families and sponsors without any vetting. There were some problems that process ran into as well. We've chosen the middle option. And these HHS facilities, this is one of them you're referring to, we had to expand and open additional facilities because there was not enough space in the existing facilities and if we were to abide by COVID protocols. That's the
It's odd that there was not enough space in existing facilities considering I've just been told that Trump ran concentration camps on the southern border.
Process and the step.
Is it possible that Biden's concentration camps are bigger than Trump's concentration camps?
I mean, it sounds like he had to expand the concentration camps, doesn't it?
This facility in Texas, which has been reopened, has been revamped, there are teachers, there is medical facilities, and our objective is to move them.
There's plenty of parking, cable TV, there's a pool, but mostly there's also cinder blocks and bars and no freedom of movement.
Yeah, there's Wayfair furniture. Weird.
Incredible.
Trump didn't have that.
Move these kids quickly from there to vetted, sponsored families and to places where they can safely be.
So, unfortunately for her, Ducey's also been studying.
This is a difficult situation. It's a difficult choice.
Oh, it's a difficult situation.
Oh, who knew that immigration was a tough issue with nuance that was hard to manage?
That's the choice we've made.
So just one step back from that, we've been talking to people down at the border who say that right now DHS and the Border Patrol are using the same kind of facilities now that they did during the Trump administration, and that there's a facility right now, it's in Donna, Texas instead of McAllen, Texas, but it's tents and chain link fence around it. And so
tents? What is he, Joe Arpaio now? My goodness. All these, these Shawshank Biden facilities here sound pretty damn medieval.
A CBP facility before they're transferred to the HHS facility, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, and the issue would be that...
I like that CVP facility, CBP Border Patrol, and HHS facilities. They're also tents with fences.
Yeah, you can put up a sign that says CBP with a little seal on it, but it doesn't make it not a tent or not a shipping container with bars on the window. At the end of the day, it is what it is.
Just in the last couple days, they had hundreds of kids that they were holding for over 72 hours, which is the legal limit to keep somebody in a temporary facility. So I'm just curious why.
Well, let's be clear though, because I know you want to be clear with the public about the differences. The CBP facilities, which you're right, the objective is to move kids, unaccompanied minors, as quickly as possible, under 72 hours, to these HHS-sponsored facilities.
Which we're not doing, like Peter Ducey just said.
Which is the one where we've been referring to in Texas. They are two different things. There were some delays last week because of weather and because some of these facilities to safely move these kids to did not have power and were not in a place where they had the capacity to take in these kids and do it safely. That is not our objective.
So much context. There's a universe of context now. Now the weather's involved.
That is not our goal. So some, unfortunately, did stay 4 days, 5 days, or longer. But the objective is to move them as quickly as possible to...
You got a 1570 on your SATs. What is 5 times 24?
120.
So that's more than 72, correct? Because 72 is the regulation, the law, whatever. Okay, so 120. What's 120 minus 72?
48.
So that's 48 hours more than they're supposed to be by law. Okay, just want to make sure.
The HHS-sponsored facilities.
Has the White House seen the comment from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who, speaking about that HHS facility in Carrizo Springs, said this is not okay, never has been okay, never will be okay, no matter the administration or party?
Well, I think the difficulty is, I haven't seen the full context of the quote or interview of the tweet that she shared, but I would say the difficulty is what I outlined earlier. We have kids coming across the border. It is heartbreaking. I think we all as human beings are heartbroken, as parents, as mothers, as fathers too. We only have a couple of choices. What we are not doing is dividing these kids and separating from their parents at the border, which is what the last administration did, and why President Biden, or then candidate Biden, and then candidate Harris were outspoken at the time about these kids being pulled from their parents.
Well, they also, kids in the cages is what they were talking about. Caged kids. And family separation, sure, is one thing. But the money shot was kids in cages.
What we are doing is working as quickly as possible to process these kids into these HHS facilities, which have been revamped, which have medical and educational services available.
She's got to stop talking up the amenities. Stop. Yeah. Well, okay, they've been medically revamped, and they've got all sorts of great amenities in there. Let's let some photogs in there. Let's let some reporters in there. Let's let Ducey in there to go in there and chat with the kids. They couldn't wait to get in there during the Trump time.
Oh, yeah.
Remember they looked at all of they're making the kids drink out of toilets when the sink was on the back part of the toilet. They're drinking out of toilets.
So that we can then transfer them to families. That's what our approach is.
And so if there is this big difference, would the administration support, if it could be done safely because of COVID and with privacy concerns for the children in mind, would the administration support letting reporters in and press in to see what the difference is?
I think you'd have to talk to the Department of Homeland Security about that. There are obviously safety protocols about that, privacy concerns, but I certainly encourage you to reach out about that. Go ahead in the back.
Yeah,
that
mostly,
was quite the little stutter there.
They wanted to see these
they're not going to be allowed in.
Vetted parents, too. I'd like to speak more about that. To Psaki's credit, he got to ask about 83 follow-ups. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there is I don't think she's got the chops to be doing that, going tete-a-tete with him. Mm-hmm. But, if they're trying to do it to show that they're being transparent, to show that they're available to aggressive reporters, then good on them. I think I enjoy them.
Well, I think, too, that
but also
lefties don't necessarily hear the same thing that we hear when they have these exchanges, because even when I found the thing with the cages yesterday, I found it on a Raw Story article that was like, boom, Jen Psaki shuts down Peter Ducey's completely disingenuous question, or something. The headline was like along those lines, and I think that, to people who agree with her, they think she's great, just like we thought McEnany was great, and they all thought she was terrible.
I don't think it's quite the same. I appreciate the art of being a flack, and so when that's done well, I'm impressed. And I thought McEnany did it very well. Mm-hmm. I certainly think McEnany was spinning 99% of the time, like Psaki. That's their job, it's to spin.
Right.
But Psaki, I don't think a lot of times is doing it well. Mm-hmm. I don't think she has the skill set to try to pull this stuff off. She's not good at this. She's just had great jobs. There's a lot of that in Washington, D.C. It also could be, before I give too much praise to the administration, it also could be that, and I didn't watch this whole presser today. I'm going during the days, so I can only watch chunks of them. So she's. It also could be that she took 158 friendly questions and needed some antagonistic questions and just used him for 6 of them.
Yeah.
In that block. Okay, so here's another one that was interesting. That somebody's got to think of a better way to ask this than this reporter did, but it is it should be a front burner question.
What is this president's view toward the loyalty that teachers' unions should have towards students? This president is a strong supporter of unions, public sector unions. Is a teachers' union's obligation to the workers and their concerns about safety, or is the teachers' union obligation also to students?
Well, I can't speak to the obligations or I'm not a spokesperson for the teachers union. I'm a spokesperson for the President of the United States. So I can convey to you that his commitment is to the students and to the teachers and to the parents who want to have their kids back in school. And he wants to do that safely. And that's what his focus is on, and that's the role he can play from the federal government.
So that's obviously weak sauce. The question wasn't phrased correctly, I don't think. I think she should have put him on, or he should have put her on the spot more.
Right.
Probably with some mental health statistics or something along those lines, or just the competing science.
And not necessarily ask the question about what's the union's obligation to students, as much as like what's Biden's obligation when he is pro-union and the interests of the union are coming into conflict with the needs of children.
And let's see. Speaking of Biden, yesterday he was hanging out with Prime Minister Trudeau, who was slamming Trump, by the way. I don't know if you heard any of that stuff. Saying it's good to have leadership back here in the White House. I'm fine with him not being on my team. And he's a very low character who has had this odd obsession with blackface, but that's fine. But here's just Trump having a little trouble expressing his or reading, really.
Let me reiterate our support for the release.
Did I say Trump? It's Biden.
Biden, yes. I knew what you meant.
Start from the scratch here. Here he is.
Let me reiterate our support for the release of the detained in China, 2 Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Covering. Human beings are not bartering chips.
Yeah, sometimes those teleprompters can be tough to get through if you are Joe Biden. But he's out there selling. He's out there still selling his huge stimulus bill that is packed. That is so cynically Democratic politics. It's just packed with crap. Steve Scalise today jumped in front of a microphone to take issue with it.
Just the other day, President Biden challenged Republicans to show him the waste. What would you cut, President Biden said. My response to President Biden would be, how much time do you have, Mr. President, to go through the litany of things in this bill that have nothing to do with COVID?
Do it, Steve.
Who said a subway to Silicon Valley has anything to do with COVID? Who said a $15 minimum wage that estimates show would kill over $50 billion in economic activity and jobs in America has anything to do with COVID? Who says a state bailout of $350 billion to blue states like California? California in this bill would get over $40 billion in bailout money when they just announced they have a $10 billion surplus. So why, Mr. President, would you want to borrow money from our children and grandchildren to bail out failed states and to keep schools closed for another year when the science says open schools today? So my challenge to President Biden would be work with Republicans to actually help families who are struggling, to reopen small businesses, to get kids back in the classroom, not one day a week in 6 months, but today.
Here, I love him ticking off the pork items. It just shows how cynical Washington is. They could care less if it's a pandemic.
Right.
All that is to them is opportunity, and we'll see what happens with this bill. I don't know. I mean, certainly some things will be knocked off. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, I don't see how any bill with a $15 minimum wage passes.
I mean, it seems a little odd to me, but
to work in the backcountry of Missouri, you're going to destroy every small town job.
Yeah, it's not workable for small businesses, and small businesses are not in a good place right now anyway. And to be fair, I mean, the minimum wage thing isn't an overnight. It's like what Massachusetts did, where it goes up a bit every year until it hits 15 in like 5 years or whatever it is. But still, it's too much in many parts of the country. That's just, it doesn't make sense in those places. I mean, 15, you could make a case for 15 in like Massachusetts, where the cost of living is very, very high. But no matter where you do it, even if you do it in places where that's like a reasonable wage to pay people, you're still putting people out of work. It's just fewer people. You're always going to prevent businesses from hiring people to some extent. And you're always going to ensure that people who don't have skills already are locked out of jobs where they can get skills like that. I mean, it's not... I'm the first to say I've worked lots of jobs where I didn't make $15 and I wasn't worth $15. And, you're not supposed to spend your whole life doing that job.
No, yeah.
You're not supposed to be working full time at that job supporting your family.
Yeah.
You're supposed to keep moving. It's not every job that exists on the earth is supposed to be a support your family.
No,
some
jobs are gigs, and now actually with the gig economy, now we know that people are doing this shopping.
That's why they're coming after that too, because like those drivers or Instacart workers or whatever don't always make the minimum wage too. But sometimes bagging groceries at the grocery store is just bagging groceries at the grocery store for a teenager to earn some extra pocket money. Sometimes it's not, I'm trying to support my family on this job.
Right. Well, and also all you're doing is accelerating having that grocery bagger be replaced by a machine, which is what the entire industries are made of, replacing humans, and that's exactly what you're going to get. And now with up here about 10, 15 years ago, remember Stop and Shop, which is one of the grocery stores we have up here, had the thing where you could self-scan. It was a little early for that then. I don't know how many people took advantage of it.
Yeah.
But now you could do everything with your phone. There's no reason to be ever putting your things on a conveyor belt so that a person can press buttons.
Well, and Amazon's working on the grocery store model where you either like the shelves are smart or the bag is smart or whatever. I forget exactly how it works. But like you just walk into the store, put your stuff in a bag and walk out and it bills your Amazon account.
Yeah.
Because that's... And so that you don't have to interact with a human or walk through a checkout line at all.
And Amazon has done a very good job of wiping out the rest of retail, and this will be exactly the future for that stuff. Alice, Andrew Cuomo.
Andrew Cuomo is having a rough day, I would say.
How's the voting going, by the way, in our poll?
We're up a little bit right now. You check that while I come here. So if you remember, last December, there was a woman who said that she had quit working in Governor Cuomo's on Governor Cuomo's staff because he had been sexually harassing her. And not much was made of it at the time because he said she was lying, basically. And that was the end of it because the media loves Cuomo and Cuomo loves the media. And he was Emmy Award winning and she was just some disgruntled person. But she put out a long post after being accused of lying on Medium today. And it's extremely detailed with dates, times things happened, things he said, things he did, emails that his staffers sent to her. So here we go. Here's her story of working with Governor Cuomo. Let's play strip poker. I should have been shocked by the governor's crude comment, but I wasn't. We were flying home from an October 2017 event in Western New York on his taxpayer-funded jet. He was seated facing me, so close our knees almost touched. His press aide was to my right, and a state trooper was behind us. That's exactly what I was thinking, I responded sarcastically and awkwardly. I tried to play it cool, but in that moment I realized just how acquiescent I had become. Governor Andrew Cuomo has created a culture within his administration where sexual harassment and bullying is so pervasive that it is not only condoned but expected. His inappropriate behavior towards women was an affirmation that he liked you, that you must be doing something right. He used intimidation to silence his critics, and if you dared to speak up, you would face consequences. That's why I panicked on the morning of December 13. While enjoying a weekend with my husband and 6-year-old daughter, I spontaneously decided to share a small part of the truth I had hidden for so long in shame and never planned to disclose. The night before, a former Cuomo staffer confided to me that she, too, had been the subject of the governor's workplace harassment. Her story mirrored my own. Seeing his name floated as a potential candidate for a U.S. Attorney General set me off. In a few tweets, I told the world what a few close friends, family members, and my therapist had known for years. Andrew Cuomo abused his power as governor to sexually harass me, just as he had done with so many other women. So then she goes on to say how they smeared her. Ron Kim had said he was bullying. I'm going to get to the good stuff here. Hang on. But, so anyway, she says her first encounter, she was the vice president at Empire State Development and was promoted to chief of staff at the State Economic Development Agency. On January 6, 2016, after the governor's speech, he stopped to talk to me. I was new on the job and surprised by how much attention he paid me. My boss soon informed me that the governor had a crush on me. It was an uncomfortable but all too familiar feeling, the struggle to be taken seriously by a powerful man. Stephanie Benton, director of the governor's offices, told me in an email on December 14, 2016, that the governor suggested I look up images of Lisa Shields, his former girlfriend, because we could be sisters and I was the better-looking sister.
Oh.
And she posts that email in here, Stephanie Benton. He says, look up Lisa Shields. You could be sisters, but you're the better-looking sister. In an email from
My goodness.
The governor began calling me Lisa in front of colleagues. That's special. I complained to friends as the governor would go out of his way to touch me on my lower back, arms, and legs. His senior staff began keeping tabs on my whereabouts. And she posts emails from his staff about where she is, if she's going to be at events, other things. The governor's behavior made me nervous, but I didn't truly fear him until December 2016. Senior state employees gathered at the Empire State Plaza Convention Center in Albany. After his remarks, the governor spotted me in a room filled with hundreds of people waiting to shake his hand. As he began to approach me, I excused myself from coworkers and moved upstairs to a more distant area of the party. Minutes later, I received a call from an unlisted number. It was the governor's body person. He told me to come up to the Capitol because the governor wanted to see me.
Oh,
I
Lordy.
made my way through the underground connection that linked the plaza to the Capitol. As the black wrought iron elevator took me to the second floor, I called my husband. I told him I was afraid of what might happen. That was unlike me. I was never afraid. I exited the elevator to see the body person waiting for me. He walked me down the hall of governors. Are there cameras here? I asked him. I remembered my mother's text warning the month before not to be alone with the governor. I worried that I would be alone with him. I didn't know why I was there or how it would end. I was escorted into the governor's office, past the desks of administrative assistants, and into a room with a large table. As he showed me around, I tried to maintain my distance. He paused at one point and smirked as he showed off a cigar box. He told me that President Clinton had given it to him while he served as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. The reference to the affair with Monica Lewinsky was not lost on me. The governor must have sensed my fear because he finally let me out of his office. His inappropriate gestures became more frequent. A signed photograph of the governor appeared in my closed-door office while I was out. In 2018, I was promoted to Deputy Secretary for Economic Development and Special Advisor to the governor. I initially turned it down because I didn't want to be near him. I finally accepted the position at the governor's insistence with one requirement. I would keep my old office and remain on a separate floor from him and his inner circle. I tried to excuse my behavior. I told myself it's only words. But that changed on a one-on-one briefing when the governor to update him on economic and infrastructure projects. We were in his New York City office on 3rd Avenue. As I got up to leave and walked toward an open door, he stepped in front of me and kissed me on the lips. I was in shock, but I kept walking. I left past the desk of Stephanie Benton. I was scared. That's the staffer who had emailed her to tell her to look up the ex-girlfriend. The idea that someone might think I was scared that she had seen the kiss. The idea that someone might think I held my high-ranking position because of the governor's crush on me was more demeaning than the kiss itself. After that, my fears worsened. I came to work nauseous every day. My relationship with his senior team, mostly women, grew hostile after I started speaking up for myself. I was reprimanded and told to get in line by his top aides, but I could not ignore it. On September 26, 2018, I sent a mass email informing staff members of my resignation. She goes on to say she implicates in particular Melissa DeRosa. She as bullying her and all this stuff. But I mean, I would say that that's pretty damning.
Yeah, the kiss is not great. Yeah, not great.
I mean, none of it is awesome. Having unlisted numbers call you to tell you to go show up alone at an office with the governor is a little frightening. Personally, I would find that frightening. And, I mean, all of it. I don't know. I don't think it's a good look. I don't know how he's going to, say that it's just all made up. How's our poll doing?
We are still ahead, Alice. Somehow we are still ahead. I'm glad you asked that question. Let me get the latest. We were by 55 to 45 was the last thing I had seen.
Wow.
Tom, who was it that said, Local Fatso's podcast says, are we serious? Burnouts and shatheads. This is our chance.
Right. So we do have to go over our names.
Yes. Okay.
We do.
So
and also, before I get to that, there was
54 to 45.
You had a compliment on your language the other night. Nancy wrote to us to say that she looks forward to our podcast. They're the best. Mondays had her laughing out loud. We had twin girls 28 years ago, and I can relate. Kids are a young girl's game. I first heard Tom on WTIC with Todd and was thrilled to learn there was a podcast I could listen to. How refreshing to hear people with common sense. Tom, keep using the salty language. I love it. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you, Nancy. I usually go on Todd on Thursdays at 3, although tomorrow I think I've got a work meeting that I cannot miss, I think. We'll see, though. But thank you very much. That's very nice of you to say. I appreciate that. I'll try to keep the expletives coming.
Mm-hmm. And so we have 4 contenders for the name that we should give to the Burn Barrel Podcast fans. And, yeah, you can have some of my water. So we have... and a couple variations. So we have the Shatheads, or the Great and Powerful Shatheads, somebody sent in, which is a reference to a show Tom used to be a producer on. That's a longtime fan that suggested that.
I went a long time through my life without people realizing that the word shat was available to use, to bludgeon me with, but the secret is out, apparently.
Yeah, so the Shatheads are a possibility. The Burnouts, or the Barrel Burnouts. The Barrelheads, the Barrelers, and the Shattuck-Rats.
Shattuck-Rats. Oh, what, like C-R-A-T-S?
It could be, they suggested in their tweet that you could call them either the Shattuck-Rats, like Democrats, or Shattuck-Rats, depending how you were feeling about your fans that day.
I like that. Damn, those are all good. All right, is that it? Should we head out? You've got to go to work, right?
Yes, I do. So,
making us warehouse money. You may need to do a lot more of that soon, Alice. But we'll see. Who knows? We're moving T-shirts.
We are. We're moving T-shirts. It's true. People are buying Burn Barrel Podcast apparel. So all that stuff is available to just premium members, and we forgot to put up a paywall that requires you to do anything to be a premium member. So you are a premium member if you're listening right now. Congratulations. Welcome to First Class. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, you are awesome. So do go onto Twitter, find that poll, vote if it's still Wednesday evening where you are. It is Burn Barrel Pod on Twitter, and we've tweeted the poll a couple times there. You can also find us at facebook.com/Burn Barrel Podcast. You can send us an email, burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube, too. You can comment there. You can subscribe to always see video versions of the podcast, any of those.
C'est la vie.